Welcome everybody to this World Satsanga on the 25th of February 2017, held in conjunction with Kevin Moore and The Moore Show, a joint collaborative venture between Kevin and myself to transmit as much information on the greater reality to as wide a population as possible for all different broadcasting means. So thank you very much for dialing into this particular method of broadcast, and thank you for looking at Kevin's website. So today we've got quite a bit to go through actually. First of all, there's a short talk by myself on conspiracy theories and how they affect us. Then I've got a whole bunch of questions to do with various aspects of some of my books and other particular subject matters. And then we're going to do an end of meet meditation to help others see the greater reality. So let's start with conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories, I actually used to like conspiracy theories and talking about alternative reasons or the supposed reasons that happen behind certain subjects and events surrounding those subjects that we find out about. And one of the conspiracies that we all like to know about is Roswell, for instance, and the UFO crashing, how things changed and the news changed, or also how things in our own government changed. For instance, when we had the Falklands War, we had one piece of news come out one week, and that news was completely rotated into 180 degrees the opposite the other week. And so we start to talk about these different things and understanding, or trying to understand an alternative viewpoint. But what it actually does for us is actually quite negative, really, from the perspective of our frequencies. When we start to communicate with each other and discuss these sorts of things, we enter into a sort of a collaborative level of not so much coercion, but a mutual way of gaining synergy through discussing things that aren't particularly high frequency. And so we start to go into this slight downward spiral. Because really, talking about conspiracy theories is very close to, if not exactly the same as, gossip, basically. When we have gossip, we tend to talk about one person or another person or a group of people, or the actions of a group of people, or what they wear, or what they think, or what they do, or what they earn, and all this sort of stuff. And this is basically being judgmental about these individuals based upon what we think they should be like. And this is the same with conspiracy theories. We start to work on what we think happened, what we think is happening, what we think could happen. And so we just start to discuss it with different people of like minds. Now, when we get together with these people of like minds, we set up this synergetic effect that means that everything that we do, say, think, and behave and act upon starts to get amplified by almost a mathematical sort of way of doing it. So if there's two people involved, it becomes 2 times 2 equals 4. So the power, or the energy surrounding it, becomes the power of 4. There's 4 people there, it becomes 4 times 4, which equals 16. So when we start to work on conspiracy theories, the immersion within it, or the desire to go even deeper into it, becomes more and more coercive, as it were, because we have the power of 16 individuals working together, rather than just the 4, for instance, if it was 4, as in this example. So all they do is they allow us to talk about a subject without a conclusion and without just closing the energy off. And so we continue to be drawn into it, to be addicted to communicating with other people who are also addicted to certain subjects that have no known end, no known termination point. And so we waste our energy. And as we waste our energy, we go through this downward spiral that allows us to move down the frequencies, because we start to become more embroiled with the political things that could cause the lack of information, that's caused the information to be classified as conspiracy rather than actual information. And so we get this misinformation coming into it as well. And so misinformation is broadcast. And when misinformation is broadcast, it's like telling a lie. So the energy surrounding broadcasting incorrect information, sometimes classified as conspiracy, sometimes classified as explanation for a certain conspiracy, contains the same level of energy as broadcasting lies. And so we spiral down, and we attract others who are also of a like mind, and they spiral down. So collectively we get this synergetic effect where we're all spiraling down the frequencies, and we become more and more immersed, engrossed, consumed by communicating in this way with individuals who are of the similar mind and whose energy we feed off. And so eventually we've come to the point where, excuse me, where we've come right down the frequencies, and any frequential gain that we've got as a result of working with higher frequential thought processes such as meditation, discussing spiritual knowledge, actual knowledge rather than sort of considered knowledge, or new knowledge, or old knowledge that's become re-understood, that lifts us up. And although that's not gossip as such, that's discussion, and if you like, it's research, and so that brings us up the frequencies. And so all those frequential advances we'd have had, or movements upwards we'd have had, would have been lost when we start to get involved in conspiracy theories, simply because the subject matter doesn't go anywhere. If you look at all the conspiracy theories that you've been exposed to, or individuals around you have exposed you to, or discussed, and you've discussed yourselves, just notice that there's no end, no termination point that allows you to finish off and stop the further progress of continued discussion, where there's no actual end because there isn't an actual level of final detail that allows us to say, actually that story's finished because this is what happened, or that's what happened, or this is a certain point where there's nothing else to go for yet because there isn't a termination point yet, for instance. So conspiracy theories work very well with each other to bring us down the frequencies, to create this surrogate gossip type of mentality and personality. So do your best to try to avoid them. Now, clearly it's going to be difficult because everybody around us has got some level of discussion about things that they think should happen in certain ways, or maybe this happened or maybe that happened. But the thing to do is to, you can listen to it, but don't get involved with it. If people try to engage you in it, just refuse to be drawn and say, well, I don't have a comment on that, or I'm not really interested. And that way you won't get pulled into the energy that they've set up, this collective synergetic effect that pulls us down the frequencies, or pulls people who previously were a higher frequency down to their level of frequency through being included in the synergetic effects associated with low frequency thought behaviours and actions that are resulting from discussing conspiracy theories that have no termination point. Okay, so that's rather a short talk on conspiracy theories and what they do. Obviously, the subject matter surrounding conspiracy theories is as wide as it is deep, and any subject you can talk about where there's a subject that is potentially being discussed or looked after or controlled by a larger governing body, such as governments or local governments or councils or senates, for instance, can be classified, or even top secret research, for instance, or even scientific research that's supposed to be for medical means. All of these things can be classified as being a potential source of subject matter for a conspiracy theory to be born within. So just be aware that keep your own counsel, maintain your own frequential state, and work with people who aren't interested about conspiracy theories, who aren't bothered about being drawn into it, who realise that actually it's drawing them down the frequencies themselves, and is starting to pull their own energies down as a result of that. So now we can move into the questions, having dealt with conspiracy theory. But it's interesting that one of the questions I'm about to go through would arguably touch that subject matter anyway. So here we go. And these questions have been sparked by some of the information or the text that was in the Greater Reality newsletter earlier in February. Question 1 is, the source said, the Earth's incarnate population is currently in a continued downward trend. refuse to be drawn down by the low frequency actions and interactions, choose detachment rather than attachment or interaction. To back this up, Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world, but also use non-violent resistance or action such as protests, civil disobedience, economic or political non-cooperation without violence to make major social changes. So the question here is, in practical terms, are we supposed to detach ourselves and just stick to our individual spiritual practices? And is that enough to change the world? And the answer is yes, basically. The idea is, to remain spiritual, you have to be in the physical but not of the physical. So you have to sort of work with it, but don't get immersed in it. Don't get sucked into it. Don't deal with it as if it is the reality. Think in terms of the greater reality. Go about your daily business with love in your heart and knowing that you're working for yourself and for God, for the source, and that everything you do is enabling you to evolve. And that everything is basically some form of test to see if you can work in the physical but not be of the physical. Continuing on this, the question is, or are we supposed to take collective action such as incarnate beings, such as getting together with like-minded people to march for something we want to see in the world rather than protest against something we don't want? How do we balance detachment versus interaction in this day and age? The biggest teaching or learning point for any civilization is leading by example. And so being detached, showing detachment whilst interacting with the individuals and the environment that you're supposed to interact with and the subjects and the workplace that you need to, including your own work, is what it's all about. So if things happen to us that generally people would think are negative, if we think of it in terms of the potential to learn something or evolve in some way, then we would be grateful for that experience. And so the objective is to recognise what is going to draw you in, what's going to immerse you in. The conspiracy theory has been one of these things which can easily draw us in and gossip as well. So it is very difficult for us to do so. But it's also very easy as well. If you think about it, if you didn't look at the news every day, then you wouldn't get drawn into stuff that's happening around you. So you can isolate yourself from the general sort of nonsense that happens around us locally and around the world, and just go about our daily business. Go about our business of being spiritual, going about our business of fulfilling our responsibilities in our career. But just don't get sucked into the non-spiritual nonsense, the arguments, the discussions, the gossip and the conspiracy theories, and stay detached. And in staying detached, you're showing an example of how you can be spiritual in a material world. You can be in the physical but not of the physical. And that gives an example to others. And others will see how serene you are, how calm you are, how you don't get wrapped up into arguments about silly little things. And they'll start to see that you've got a better way of life. And in demonstrating that better way of life, people will copy you. And in copying you, you will provide the platform for a better environment for us all to live in. And so by being the example, we teach others. Second part is, Source said, be firm in your spiritual beliefs, turn them into certainties and not possibilities. You said, we do create our own reality, and you are learning more about this from the curators of the book I'm writing now. Okay, this is a question to me there. We know there are multiple parallel versions of ourselves experiencing various parallel conditions. So the question is, when we find ourselves in this downward trending reality, how do we consciously create or choose a higher frequency trajectory, timeline, or event stream, where we could be moving forwards, not backwards, to things like neo-fascism, corporate malevolence, protectionism, persecution, separation, etc. If we do nothing, which is also a choice, then things like that will likely spiral downwards. And we don't need another world war. We need practical guidance on the situation, how in our world it's hard to know whether to act or not. How to balance being here versus doing something useful that would be do the most good for the people worldwide. So please help us. So again, it's all about projecting who and what you are. The comment about Gandhi is be what you want to experience or be what you want to be, and let others copy you, is the way forwards. So we turn our spiritual beliefs into certainties, into knowledge, by being what our spiritual beliefs are, by being what our spiritual knowledge is, by broadcasting it. Not specifically shouting off on the top of a soapbox, but being it. You know, be the person we feel a spiritual person should be, and think, behave, and act in that way. And that shows other individuals how to think, behave, and act as well. And people, if they're of a like mind, will copy that and become their own individual, and that they'll turn their own spiritual beliefs into certainties, and will start an upward cascade where you've got one person assists somebody else by being the good example, and then there's two people. Then two people can create four, then four can create eight, and then eight can create 16, and 16 can create 32. So we only need to start on our own and be what we want to be, and be what we want the rest of the world to be on our own, and the rest of the world will eventually follow. So I hope that answered that particular question. There's sort of a follow-on question now, relevant to the book The Origin Speaks, and we talked about sort of event streams and timelines in the last question. But it said, the question is, would I please explain this question in relation to the earlier question about choosing timelines and event streams? In The Origin Speaks, it's page 49, The Origin said, nothing is new. It's just different entities experiencing the old in a different way, which is exactly what I desire. Differentiated experience and understanding. So, I have said that the natural thing for the event stream to do is to go from the nearest event to the next event that should have happened, because it's already happened. So how do we choose a higher frequency timeline in this context? Are we as individuals possibly repeating event streams that other beings have already done in their way, in their time, or is every entity choosing a unique path of every time? And follow-on parties, I hope you see what I'm getting at here. Even if we are following an event stream and go from one event space to another, and it's identical apart from 1% of 1% of 1%, then that 1% of 1% of 1% difference is worth experiencing. And so it doesn't matter if we're going over old ground, if we're providing an overlap. It's the way we do it that counts. Everybody can drive a motor car, but everybody drives a motor car in a different way. We all drive our motor car to our place of work differently every day. We don't use exactly the same gear changes, we don't go on exactly the same piece of tarmac. We move in different ways, we experience different traffic conditions, we experience different weather conditions, we experience different times to get there, because maybe we've left home early, or maybe we've left home a bit later, and we need to sort of get there a bit quicker. So everything we do has a slight change to it, has a slight different twist to it. So if we think about it in terms of, if we want to go to a higher timeline, then we have to plan how we're going to do that. And so we can change the inevitable timeline, so to speak, that if we didn't think about what we were doing, we just did it, which is what most of us do, basically. And we start to consider what we want to do and make a considered response and a considered series of actions, or thoughts and behaviours and actions. Then we can start to choose a higher frequency event space or event stream or timeline and move in that direction. And so in essence, we start to choose a higher path. If somebody asks us a question that starts to annoy us, we shouldn't react, we shouldn't snap back. We should wait a moment and look for what the proper response should be. We should wait for a moment and log into them and understand where they're coming from. Why are they interacting with us in this way? Why are they angry? Why are they frustrated? Why are they making us frustrated? What part of the interaction between us is karmic? What part of the interaction between us is the opportunity to remove some karma? What part of the interaction between us is testing the previously removed karmic link to see if we have in fact totally removed it? And so we start to think in a more considered way. Now this means that we won't be initially feeding back to people as fast as they would like us to, and they may think we're a bit slow, but eventually you'll get to the point where you can do this quite instantaneously. You'll understand somebody before where they're coming from, where they're going to, what they're experiencing, the sort of frame of mind that they're in before they've even engaged you. And so by the time they've said the first sort of three or four words, you already know how to interact with them and choose the higher timeline in this respect. So it's, because most of us, when we start to have somebody who's aggressive to us, we start to respond in an either aggressive or defensive way. Whereas if we respond in a neutral way, we dissipate the energy associated with it, and therefore we take in the higher frequency timeline or event stream, as the case may be. So it's again choosing the higher one and noticing that everything we do, even though we do repeat ourselves at times, has very minor changes at some point. And maybe there's thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of different entities have experienced what we're experiencing now in various different parallel ways. But the way we do it will be unique to us, and therefore of benefit will be to the source and of course to the origin. Okay, so another set of questions here. We're going to talk about the Pleiadians. Okay, this was sparked by the Origins words or in the sources words in the February newsletter. Okay, so the question is, the Pleiadians said it takes 144,000 people to create a grid of compassion, which may happen after a national disaster or a terrorist event, e.g. 9/11, but then dissipates. I said that the critical mass required to pull everybody together in a group of sentients is about 10% of the world population. In 2014, I estimated that only 14 million were becoming awake and aware, much less than the 700 million people needed to get to 10%, because we've got 7 billion people on the planet right now. So the question sort of goes through and says, are there many more people awake and aware now in 2017, even though it looks like chaos in the world? I'm just asking the question actually, and the response is we've actually lost a few, because we've gone through a collective downward spiral a little bit. As we ascend the frequencies, we go through this sawtooth profile, where the mean of the sawtooth profile, which goes up and down, is actually a nominal upwards, so we are moving upwards. But recently we've gone through what I would call a wood saw profile, where rather than having teeth that go up and down and they're a known size, with a big wood saw, the big wood hand saw that we used to have in the old days before we had sawmills, you have a big tooth with little teeth on it, and then it drops down to a big tooth again. So you have big teeth with little teeth on top. And where we are now is we've dropped down the valley of one of these big teeth, so to speak. So we've had a lower than expected drop down, and it's caused everybody out, including me. I didn't expect us to be coming down this far. But in essence, we've probably lost around 2 million people who are being aware and awake. People who are becoming spirituals have sort of abandoned it, or got disillusioned, or got fed up, or have become bored, for instance. And so we have lost people. But on the other side, we have other people who are starting to become aware and awake again. And these people who are becoming aware and awake now in this downward trend are more resilient than those individuals who we've lost. So although we've lost about 2 million people, bringing us down to 12 million, we've got the potential, I'm being told, to go up to 26 million by the end of the decade. So right now we're going down, and we've lost a few people in terms of this critical mass we need. But actually, although we've lost a few, we're going to gain a load more individuals who are more resilient to the upward and downward trends, because they're becoming aware and awake on the way down. Okay. Next part of it is, are we still hovering between frequency bands about 3.10 to 3.15 as a collective, in brackets, humanity as a whole? Right now, we're in frequency band 3. I'll explain the 3.10 3.1 or 3.15 in the moment. But basically, we exist in the first three frequencies. Mankind scientists call them dimensions, but my understanding is a dimension is a much higher piece of structure within the multiversal environment that the Source created for us. It's the frequencies that create our gross physicality, the lower frequencies, the first three. As we go up the frequencies, we start to get to those higher pieces of structure which allow the gross physical to exist. And so the frequencies 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12 are what allow the framework that allow the gross physical aspect of what we are and our environment and the multiverse of this level to exist. And so we can move up the frequencies, so to speak, through sort of sub-frequential states. And this comment about 3.1 and 3.15 is in essence moving from the third frequency up to the fourth. It's like an upward and downwards sawtooth profile again. So the question about are we still hovering between these bands, between 3.1 and 3.15, bearing in mind that we've lost some people in terms of our critical mass, or work towards gaining a critical mass, we could give you a logical thought that no, we've actually gone down. But my understanding is we're about 3.13 because we had gone higher than 3.15 at one point. We got up to about 3.7, and so we've dropped down as a result of this big sawtooth profile, this big tooth on the wood saw profile we've got, and so we are coming down. But we've sort of, I'm looking at it now from where I'm sitting and looking at the way we are moving. We're about to bottom out, so we're not going to go much lower than this 3.13, and then we'll be able to go back up again. And with all these other individuals going to be starting to become aware and awake, who've started to become aware and awake on the downward trend rather than an upward trend, which is an interesting thing to observe, then we'll start to move upwards and start to go back up towards the this potential 3.7 we got to earlier, and hopefully higher than that as well. The next part of the question is if some individuals are operating at higher levels, are they still at frequency band 3 or ascending into FB4 or FB5 levels? There are people who are, shall I say, immune to these downward trends because they continue to hold their own frequencies, and there are people who do operate at levels higher than frequency level 3 and have moved into frequency level 4, and some of those who are in frequency level 4 have gone to 5, simply because they work on themselves. They are strict with themselves in terms of how they think, behave and act. They stay directly on the spiritual path. They don't interact with the material world as much as what everybody else does, and so they do move upwards. And these are individuals who sort of, if you like, they keep themselves away from the general civilization, such as hermits, for instance, or people who go into a reclusive state of being, such as some yogis, for instance. You know, they only progress the way they do by limiting their contact with the outside world, or working in ashrams where everybody else is working on themselves, and they're all trying to help and they're all helping each other move onwards and upwards. So these individuals are. And there's a few individuals who are able to work in the material world, even with very high levels of responsibility and materialistic wealth, who still manage to ascend because they know that the material world and their wealth doesn't mean anything, and they're just using it for the benefit of themselves, for the purpose of helping others exist on the planet and providing. Sometimes if they have a business, they're providing salaries for those people who work for them, for instance. So there are individuals who are moving upwards. The last part of this is it time to bring out more white children and other masters to help us get over this drop in frequency. My understanding is that there's still only about 3 white children here, and one of them is the mother of the one is in China, as I was the first one I met in 2014, I believe, The other one was an unborn as such, and was going to be born into with a wonderful lady in London. And there was another one who a lady was the godmother, so to speak, of this child. And although this child had been born to a mother who was not the same as the mother I saw in China in terms of level of purity, the godmother was that level of purity and was going to look after that particular child. And I'm just seeing that there's supposed to be 12 white children. 4 of them will be qualitative leaders, 4 will be quantitative leaders, and 4 will be behind the scenes, a bit like Babaji. But I'm looking at this, and what I'm seeing is there seems to be a slight delay in the rest of them coming through, because they want to start to come through again on the upward trend to sort of help this upward trend be a bit of a springboard for them. So although they will come and they will be here and they will be classified as sort of masters, certainly those who are here and who are the qualitative teachers and the ones in the background, so to speak, they'll be classified as masters, the same as Babaji or Jesus or even Yogananda, for instance. They'll be classified as to that level. Krishna, for instance, and the Buddha as well. They'll be in that league. If not, I'm being told, slightly higher. So they will come. And I'm being told within the next sort of 20 years we'll start to see the phenomena that these individuals are. Okay. Last set of questions from this particular lady, and I'll give great thanks to this lady because she does the transcription. So thank you for that. So in the question, in the History of God glossary, I mentioned 3 new terms. It's unclear whether they apply to our multiversal structure or not. Please give me some real-life examples for each term and what they operate at. So a macro universe, a complete universe where our own universe would serve to be the subatomic levels. So this is a macro universe is a much bigger piece of structure, and if you like, it would still be within a multiversal structure, but just not our multiversal structure, so to speak. So this is looking at a structure where the structure within the structure. And so a macro universe is a complete universe where our own universe would serve to be the subatomic levels. A micro universe is a complete universe at the scale of the subatomic. So basically, the micro universe is what our universe would be within a macro universe, and a minor universe or minorverse is a universe of lesser content in terms of dimension, frequency, and habitation, one of lower importance. So that is basically the subatomic of our subatomic, if you understand. So if we have a condition where we have the structure within the structure, so not specifically how our multiverse is or local universe is created. This is to do with a different structure where we have structure within the structure as a function of static structure, if that makes any sense. So we have a macroverse where our universe is at the subatomic level. So if you think about the atoms within the macro universe being what our particular universe is, and then the atoms within our universe would be the minor universe. Okay, so the micro universe is where we are now. The macro universe is the bigger structure above us, and the minorverse is the structure well below us. Now, these questions, sometimes I'm not particularly good at reading the questions and broadcasting them to you all, but there will be a transcript from this wonderful lady who does this. So I hope these questions will help you to understand the answers. But in essence, this is not structure within our multiverse. Okay, this is an example of another structure that another source entity would create, for instance, or another structure outside of our source within the origin. Okay, so I hope the use of our universe as being the sort of atomic structure of the macro of the larger macro universe is useful, and that a minor universe would be the atomic structure of our or of our particular universe. I hope that's, as an example, works for you all. Okay, another question here. Considering the evolution in spiritual awareness since the time of Jesus, why hasn't the world seen a modern-day master or Christ? Jesus said, "Follow me, and greater things you can do." And of course, that's all to do with, follow him, do the work, spiritual work, and you will be able to become a higher frequency and get the functions associated with that. And the Krishna and Buddha had similar teachings. But it appears that not one soul has been able to replicate Jesus' transfiguration from a mind-body ego to becoming a Christ. Or did Ramana, Maharishi, Yogananda and others become Christs and we just don't know it? There has been many individuals who have become that level of master and who've had functionality or powers, if you want to call it that, equal to or greater than Christ and maybe Krishna and Buddha. Simply because the frequencies have been higher for these individuals to work with. Babaji, for a start off, was a very powerful master, and still is a very, very powerful master. And that's being, which is known in India, of course, and some people in the Western world also recognise Babaji, because Babaji taught Jesus. He's still around today, and he still manifests a form today, and he's still able to be here and work with us all today. So there are individuals still here who've existed for a long time who have mastered the energies surrounding who and what they are and their physicality, and can manifest, materialise and dematerialise their gross physical form, and maintain that gross physical form in a youthful appearance as well. In terms of, where are these people? They tend to keep themselves out of the way. Any spiritual master that is, shall I say, quantitative, and actually Yogananda was quantitative in some ways, but also being qualitative, because of the number of individuals who followed him. That's the quantitative. That's the donation of quantitative. Qualitative means you have one or two students, and you only work with those. Work in the background means you work in the background and you don't take any praise or recognition for what you're doing. You just do it for the benefit of the world, basically. But many of those who are on the quantitative side do tend to lose a bit of their ability, because they are interfacing with us all of the time, and they have to resist the possibility of showing off their functionality, their powers. And so this is difficult. And so people of this level tend to hide themselves away instead, and work in the background, because they know if they start to interface and show their abilities, then it becomes, shall we say, a marketable commodity in some people's minds, and they would be put under significant stress, so to speak, to show what they can do. It'll be commercialised, they'll be under pressure to be here, there and everywhere, to heal thousands of people and stuff like that. So in today's world, it'd be very, very difficult to be like Jesus, or somebody of higher power than Jesus, and not cause sensation. And these people don't seek sensation. So there's been quite a few, and there still are. I'm being told there's 7 in the world who are of this level, but they keep themselves out of the way because they don't want to cause sensation. They don't want to be part of the energies around it, because ultimately it pulls their frequencies down. So I hope I answered that question. Oh, I'm just told that there may be one of the white children in 20 to 50 years' time who will show how being a higher frequency allows our functionality to operate at a higher level, showing some of the material functions that people want to see, such as um, telepathy, teleportation, telekinesis, and those sorts of things. And he'll be able to show it in a way which can't be classified as being magic. And and he'll be able to explain how it can be done, and how everybody can be done, but they need to be pure. So that's going to be an interesting time, I think. Probably towards the end of my particular lifetime, but at the end of the day, it'll be interesting. But the thing is, with the material functions or higher functions associated with being higher frequency, is that they're very attractive to people who want to use them for material gain, and so it is difficult for these people to work in this way and divorce themselves from being pulled into the commercial machine, so to speak, marketing machines. So let's wait with expectation for this individual to come along who can do all this stuff and not be sucked into the commercial bandwagon. Okay, so the next set of questions here. So the next set of questions comes from the book Beyond the Source 2, where Source 79 talks about a tree mind and used the aspen tree, which is on Earth, as an example, which was introduced to cope with the ever-increasing carbon emissions we have. And they communicate with each other, with all the other aspen trees on Earth and in the universe. And so the questions are, who introduced the aspen trees to Earth? I'm told that, and I've never asked this question, to be honest. I'm told that a group of entities who were working with the Pleiadians. Now, the entities were higher frequency and wouldn't have been able to have worked on the gross physical themselves because they remained energetic. But they worked with the Pleiadians, who are higher frequency than us, but are still nevertheless incarnate, to be able to introduce them. And they bought them from a location 2 galaxies from where we are now, and they were basically transported, materialized, I was just being told, making sure that they were able to work in the frequencies and the environments that we have currently on Earth, and that they would proliferate. So they were sort of materialized here. But teleported is the one way of saying it. I'm being told the Pleiadians have this methodology where they can, rather than using a craft or a ship, they can use like transmitter stations or boosting stations where they can move or teleport items from one place to another, but only through a certain distance. Which is simply a limitation of the technology that they've got. But they sort of brought them here, going from one station to another station, and then they basically introduced them something like 3 million years ago, I'm being told here, to help with the carbon dioxide levels then. Because, I mean, don't forget, the Earth has been work in progress for a long time, and although we've had civilizations that have come and gone within a million years, there's always been an opportunity to see what's going to happen here. And of course, the entities who are working with the Pleiadians in this instance could use different event spaces to introduce them. So although the Pleiadians are a race that we know now, and we think about as existing in our timeline, they would have, although they could use technology to teleport these things, they could also be allowed to function with I'm being told, the entities they were working with were a genre of curators that could allow them to use event space, so to speak, to move into the right time zone, and allow them to drop these things into the right place. So they've been here for quite some time, as they were saying, 3 million years, which surprised me, to be honest. And when I was thinking about it, and I was just talking to you now, I thought, well, how would that happen? If they were, if the Pleiadians are a sort of a recent sort of incarnate vehicle that we as souls have been using, and I was told that they could only transport them to a certain point, but using their own technology. Then they had to use the help of curators, who are, well, they're under the direction of the curators. These are a group of entities who maintain all aspects of the multiverse, and there are obviously a whole genre of of these entities that work with the gross physical universe, as well as the higher frequencies of it as well, allowed those then to be placed into an event space that was far enough away now, past from our perspective, to allow them to grow and proliferate and move around the Earth. So they've also done their own self-seeding. Okay. They communicate with other aspirin trees on Earth by simply using the Earth. Trees have roots, and the roots allow them to dig into the Earth, and the energy is associated with the Earth as well there. So it's a little bit like once you're on the Earth, from a tree's perspective, you can use the Earth as a communication medium. I'm being told they can transmit energy through the ley lines of the Earth. That makes it easier for them. The ley lines, of course, are energies. They're almost like the energy grids that we have on our body, where the lines of energy go to the different chakras, and there's a similar sort of thing. We have major chakras, minor chakras, and mini chakras. And the Earth has similar things, or energy junctures. And these chakras, these areas, also can be classified as chakras, if you want to call them that. But the trees communicate telepathically by using the energies associated with the ley lines and working with those. And they communicate with other aspirin trees in the rest of the universe by using the unseen lines that the Earth is connected to. Now, I seem to remember mentioning something like this in one of the books, either the History of God or one of the Beyond the Source books. But the gross physical is connected energetically altogether. So every point and every gross physical representation within a point, that being a planet or that area of locally dense energy, is connected together by a sort of loose energy matrix that keeps it together and keeps it in place. And the trees use that energy matrix, as it were, to communicate with as well. They're not just in a few solar systems. They're in, I'm being told, they're in 32 different galaxies, in various different variations of the theme, as it were. So they're not just on our particular planet or the solar systems in our galaxy. They're on 32 other galaxies within the structure of the physical universe, the gross physical universe. Okay, and that includes some of the higher frequencies as well. So in the fourth and fifth, I'm being told that they also appear within on those particular galaxies as well. Okay, the final question here is: are trees and all forms of plant life sentient and communicative with all others of their species? They do communicate with well, for instance, an oak will communicate with an oak, an elm will communicate with an elm, simply because they're, as with the aspens, and I didn't explain this, they're all the same energy, they're all the same being, basically. So they're like a collective mind, really. They're a collective being, and they exist collectively. And so, although they are separate physical manifestations, so to speak, they are connected energetically, and they can use this energy matrix that's within the universe, and that which we call the ley lines on the Earth, to communicate with each other. And so we've got this ability to move around, or their ability to move around in terms of their communication and their intelligence as a result of that. Now, I'm told that they're not specifically sentient as such, but they are very intelligent. Sentience is a different classification. I believe there's a question going to be asked on that in a moment. But it's interesting to note that the level of intelligence associated with them will be classified as being super intelligent, although we, as incarnate human beings, wouldn't be able to experience that communication with them unless we commune with them. And when we commune with them on their own frequencies, then we can start to pick up how connected they are. I mean, if you were to meditate close to a tree and connect with it on a regular, frequent basis, you'll start to be able to communicate with it properly, and you'll see how the depth of what they are isn't specifically that tree, you'll start to pick up all the other trees on the planet, and if you go deeper, you'll start to pick up all the rest of the trees in this particular galaxy and the rest of the universe as well. So they all tend to communicate as a collective mind, so to speak, although their physical manifestations are protrusions from that mind, as it were. And they do have like a super intelligence, but they're not specifically sentient as such. And I'm told that they can communicate with others that aren't of their species, because they are variations of a similar mind, similar collective mind. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. It's a series of questions. Okay, so first one is regarding the true energetic self. That's we are each part of, and all of the aspects that it has. It's basically what advantages, disadvantages are there to having a maximal 12 aspects. Now, very quickly, before I go into the rest of this question, our true energetic self can project a total of 12 aspects into any part of the multiverse. Generally, it tends to be the lower frequencies, because the opportunity for accelerated evolution through being incarnate or associated with the lower frequencies of the multiverse, with the physical universe, are enticing. So they tend to sort of spend quite a bit of time accelerating evolutionary progression through projecting parts of themselves into the gross physical, and then they move onwards and they experience the rest of the multiversal environment. But they don't need to specifically experience the gross physical first. They can experience the other functions of the other universes within the multiverse in a random and ad hoc way, dipping and diving into the gross physical whenever they need to. So there's 12 aspects that could be created. There's also each of those aspects can also project 12 smaller aspects of themselves, which are classified as shards. Okay. Now, the sentience associated with an aspect is around 2.5%. If all 12 aspects were projected from the true energetic self, then there needs to be about 70% of the total sentience associated with the energy of the true energetic self remaining in the energies. So, if there's 12 aspects, then each of those would have 2.5% of the sentience associated with the true energetic self. And if an aspect projected 12 shards in total, they would each have 2.5% of the 2.5% of the sentience associated with their aspect that has created them as a shard. And so, because the aspect has to keep about 70% of its sentience intact, as it were, to maintain its own individuality. So, if all aspects were projected from the true energetic self, and all aspects projected 12 shards, there'd be 144 different souls or sub-souls, so to speak, that could be projected into the physical universe or any other part of the multiverse to experience, learn and evolve on behalf of the true energetic self, which is experiencing learning and evolving on behalf of the source, who is experiencing learning and evolving on behalf of the origin. Okay. So that explains that a little bit. So let's go back into the question again. So I'll start again. Regarding the true energetic self that we're each part of, and all the aspects it can have, basically what advantages, disadvantages are there to having the maximum of 12 aspects? I realise more aspects equals more evolutionary opportunities for the test to test the true energetic self, to accrue content. But I'm looking more at the mechanical issues here that drive the current aspects. For instance, A, do all true energetic selves have 12 aspects, and if not, what is the driver of how many are allocated? And B, can a test change from having 12 aspects to some lesser number, and why would this happen? Right, before I go into C, let me explain this. Although a true energetic self could project 12, it's not uncommon for them not to. In fact, most of the true energetic selves I have encountered in some of the readings I do as personal consultations, a vast number of them don't have all 12 projected. So really, it's down to personal choice of the true energetic self and the desire to experience, learn, and evolve, and the opportunities to experience, learn, and evolve as they come into play, so to speak, and also how much sentience they want to attribute to a particular aspect, because they don't have to only give them 2.5%. So if you've got a true energetic self which is projected 3 aspects, it could elect to give them the full amount of sentience that it can do. So if you've got 30% of sentience you can attribute to those 3, you can give them 10% of sentience each. And so it's quite possible for those 3 aspects can be very, very highly sentient, as it were. And then you start to get individuals like the Christ or the Buddha or Yogananda come through in this incarnation, because they've got a high level of sentience associated with them. Or there'll be an aspect that's born into a body that introduces a completely new and novel technology that would never have been discovered by anybody else. So it's not necessarily a done deal that they will project all 12, by the way. So it can do 1 or 2 or 10 or 12 or 11 or whatever it feels it wants to, depending on what it's going to achieve or wants to achieve. So to finish off, the question C is: can a true energetic self change from a lesser number like 1 to more aspects, a maximum of 12? This seems like an easier function. Yeah, as I just said, basically they have the opportunity to project as many as they want to, up to a maximum of 12, and the aspects can project in a similar way as many shards as it wants to, up to a maximum of 12. Now, I've asked the question a number of times, why is it 12? And it's to do with it's a function of the structure of what they are, because ultimately we are, as aspects of our true energetic selves, a function of individualization from source, which is a function of individualization from the origin, and as such we are individualized each smaller units of, and therefore as a result of, we have sentience, and then sentience with given a body of energy, and that body of energy has a certain structure, and that structure has, to some extent, limitations in terms of how it is, because it's all a function of 12 based upon how the origin is structured. And so what we are revolves around that structure, and what we can create revolves around that structure as well. So we can only create 12 as aspects, the incarnate aspects. We could only create a maximum of 12 shards, and our true energetic self could only create a maximum of 12 aspects. Okay. So I hope that helps that particular question. And number 2 here: can I give a clear, concise definition of sentience? Is sentience merely an effect of emergent properties between 2 systems, aka organisms or energies? And there's a preamble down here. It says, I know you go over it in many ways in your books, so I'm looking for a consolidated statement of what sentience is, and one that can help those who cannot see sentience beyond a narrow human-centric definition, failing to even recognise it in non-human and animal communities. Sentience was the underpinning of Chapter 26, how Source entered to assign sentience to energy to fulfil the requirements of creating smaller beings in The Origin Speaks. And on page 364, The Origin is quoted as saying, it's the ability to work with and to have the potential to create sentience through the intelligent functions of working together and sacrificing their smaller individual intelligence for the creation of larger single intelligence. This definition can be applied to everything in existence, from atoms in minerals to the complex interworking of beehive communities, to the massive grouping of government intelligence agencies becoming a global super network. It seems there is more to that is sentience that is not, looking at it in this way. Well, very, very simply, if I look at it really simply and try and put it in as few words as possible, sentience is the product of self-aware creativity. Within The Origin Speaks, we go through the levels of how energy can become sentient if it's left up to itself, as it were, its own devices. And so that's if nothing happens. But in reality, the sentience that occurs at the end of an energy's self-evolution, this isn't anything to do with sentience that is assigned a body of energy, like when the source took its own sentience, divided it up and assigned it to different energies to allow us, our energetic selves, to exist. Sentience arises when the intelligence has got to the point where it's self-aware, where it is able to understand itself and its environment, and it's able to experiment with that environment, create within the environment, understand the results of that creation within the environment, and make changes to that creation to optimize its results, to improve basically. And so that's a definition of sentience: the ability to evolve through creativity and augment that level of creativity by improving it. So that's what sentience basically is, and working with, in that context, working with everything that is within the environment that it is creating within. That's not just the environment, but that's the other individual entities and energies, and other sentience that's within the environment. Now, super sentience, I suppose you would call, is what the origin and the source are. But in essence, because they're like polyomniscient sentience, it's like everywhere. Whereas ours is sort of localized sentience. It certainly is very, very localized when we incarnate. But in essence, we can think of it in terms of that definition I just said, where sentience is the ability to become self-aware, create through that self-awareness, and look at the results of that creation and modify it to improve it. Okay, so I hope that answered that particular question. So it may be quite simple as what sentience is, although I've no doubt there'll be lots and lots of philosophers on the planet who would like to argue with that. But that's what I've got. And actually, as I was talking, I was actually getting information. I was channeling information as well to try and find a more, should I say, punchy, summarised method of stating what sentience is, rather than the couple of pages that were in the Origin Speaks. Okay, so that comes to the end of the questions, and I'm really pleased I managed to get through all of the questions, because there was an awful lot, and I managed to do it quite efficiently, I think. So thank you very much for those people, US, JM, WP and ME, for those questions. Very, very thoughtful questions and very thought-provoking. I learn as much from channeling the information for these questions as you guys do as well. So everybody learns at the same time, so it's a win-win situation. Okay, so what we're going to do now is go through the excuse me, the end of Satsanga meditation to help others become more self-aware. Okay. So what I'd like you to do now is just to calm down. Close your eyes. If you're not already sitting in a straight-backed chair, do so. I don't usually suggest that people lie down and meditate because it does invoke sleep, but it is possible to lie down and meditating. So if you find that's preferential, do so. Just don't fall asleep. Meditation is a focused concentration, by the way. It's focused concentration on communicating with God and self. It's not just closing the eyes and falling asleep. I know all of you who listen to this Satsanga know that, but it is something which is grossly misunderstood. Okay. Or if you want to sit down, you can sit down cross-legged, that's okay. Some people who are used to sort of Zen meditation sit down by kneeling as well. Anything with the back is straight is good. Okay. So close your eyes. Focus on the the point just in between the two eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose, which is the location of the spiritual or third eye. And I want you all to just think of yourself as being in a room together with me. In previous satsangas, we've walked down the corridor, we've opened a door and sat on chairs that are in a circle. So I think the people who've worked with the Satsanga in the past can just move straight into the room rather than going down the corridor. And I want you all to sit on a chair. And we're all together in this room, sitting in a chair that's in a circle. Everybody's sitting together on a chair which is in a circle. And I want you all to just visualize that in the center of us is the planet Earth. So it's like a hologram of the planet Earth. And I want you to associate the planet Earth with all those beings that aren't aware and awake. What I want you to do now is just to visualize a person who isn't aware and awake, who you know. And I want you to overlay that person's face on the earth and then assign that person to be the representation for all of the people on the earth. So when we work on that person whose image you're overlaying on the planet Earth in front of us, who you know isn't aware and awake and who you want to help become aware and awake, that person represents everybody else on the planet. And so when you work on that person, you work on everybody else on the planet as well, by default. And one of the ways to assist in people's wakefulness is to open their third eyes, is to help them by opening their third eyes. And so what we're going to do is just use visualization, use your visual visualization, or use the mentally spoken word by repeating exactly what I'm going to say now, to achieve exactly the same thing on the person that you're helping to become aware and awake, who's representing everybody on the earth. And in opening their eye, their third eye, you're opening everybody else's third eye as well on the earth. Whether they choose to use their third eye being open is up to them. And some will not. But at least will help them in some way to become more intuitive. And so visualize their forehead. On their forehead is a skin, an area in between the two eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose, where the pituitary gland is, the physical representation of the third eye. And so we want to use some symbology or some visualizations to allow us to expose that pituitary gland and start to make it work in a spiritual way, rather than being in slumber or being in a state of inoperation. So I want you to imagine that you'd move this skin, you'd take with your fingernails, you flick the edge of this skin around the area of the third eye, and it's a bit like cling film, for instance, or a protective layer that you sometimes see on computer screens or laptop screens or mobile phones. And we pull this skin off, but it's not clear, it's opaque. And although it looks like skin, as an overlay of the skin, when we pull it off, we start to see there's a window there. And as we look at this window, into this window, we see this biological organ that's called the pituitary gland. We have to think of the pituitary gland in this particular instance as needing to have access to sunlight. And all around this pituitary gland there is all sorts of, shall we call it, packing or low frequency rubbish, like layers of dust. This is the stuff that we allow in to stop the pituitary gland from getting access to the environments beyond the skin of the forehead. And so I want you to visualize clearing out all of this stuff. This pituitary gland should appear to be something like a walnut in the center, in between the central front lobes of the brain, around that area. But I want you to clean the area. You can use an imaginary vacuum cleaner if you like. Okay? We can blow the dust away. We can remove any packing, if you see anything like visualizations of these little small sausages of foam that you sometimes see in boxes when we bought something from a shop or an internet-based selling outlet to protect whatever's in there. Just remove all of this stuff that's there, so that this small walnut-shaped gland has access to the environment outside of the other side of the skin on the forehead. When we pull this skin off on the front, this cling film, this opaque cling film like skin that looked like it was skin, and showed a window there, we also have a window going through the skull as well. So it's not just a case of having to put a hole in the skull. There's already a hole there. There's already an energy tunnel there that allows the third eye to look through its integrated environment. And so just clean the area up so you've got this area of grey matter, this brain matter, and this little walnut-shaped gland, that's the pituitary gland. I actually don't know what it looks like, but this is a good visualization. It's what I'm told to use. Or even a walnut. Yeah, this walnut, yeah. And just make it all clean. And then, using your fingers, your energetic fingers, take hold of it and bring it as close, pull it forwards. There's enough, it's attached to various different veins or nervous system, everything else that allow it to move forwards. Think of it like moving forwards on a concertina or something. That's okay. Bringing it forwards towards the front surface of the skin, so that the pituitary gland is not hidden down in the brain, but it's brought as close to the surface as possible. It's brought as close to the surface of the window as possible. And therefore, this pituitary gland, which is the physical manifestation of the third eye, is now as close to the surface of our forehead as it can be. Any energetic debris or obstacles, this packing, for instance, or the dust, have been removed by you using either your fingers or some form of energetic hoover, for example, have been removed, and all the area now is clean, and so everything is operational. And we simply have to turn it on now. And the best way to visualize turning things on is to think that in the area close to where the pituitary gland was, buried in the front of the brain, in between the left hand and right hand lobes of the brain, there's a little on-off switch. A simple up and down toggle switch. Up is off and down is on. And I want you to visualize your hands flicking that switch down so it's in the on position. And flicking it in the on position, this little sort of walnut-sized gland starts to glow golden. And starts to transmit its own energy vortex, similar to, but not exactly the same as, the chakra that's associated with the spiritual or third eye. And so we have a vortex of energy projecting out from the third eye now, as it's now operational, from the front of the forehead. And so the third eye of this individual is now operational. This individual represents all of the individuals who are on the earth, who will be trying to make self-aware. And the best way to become self-aware is to start to increase their intuition, their clairvoyance. These are the third eye, to see things in the mind's eye, or see things spiritual overlaid in the physical eyes in some people's experience. Or clairaudience, opening the spiritual or third eye allows clairaudience to also function, hearing things in your mind's ear. And clairsentience, opening the spiritual or third eye, also allows the function of clairsentience to operate. That's knowing things that are outside of your normal human experience, understanding concepts, understanding things that are presented to you without being exposed to them previously. Cosmic consciousness. And also empathic powers as well. So all of these functions will start to work, either instantaneously or slower, with these people. All of these people on the earth who've been represented by this one person that you would like to make aware and awake. Of course, whether they take up the opportunity of the third eye being opened and work with it is up to them, as part of their life plan maybe, or part of their decision process. So don't be too worried if you don't see much evidence, as it were, as a result of the work you've done. But nevertheless, what we've done now together, in picking this person to represent the whole earth, and opening their third eye, and getting it working, is a very positive thing to do, and is a step in the right direction. So, using your visualization, your mentally spoken word now the job is done, you can let the image of that individual dissolve and the image of the earth take over. We can start to let the image of the earth dissolve now, and so that we're all in this room together now on one of these chairs in a circle. And so you come back into your own room now, your own place, knowing that you've done a very important piece of work by slowly coming back into your own room, slowly opening your eyes, and take a drink of water to help ground you and balance you. Then you can keep your one eye open on these people and see who's becoming more aware and awake. And you'll be surprised that some do, and be even more surprised that some of you thought should do but don't. But nevertheless, now the work we've done has put everything in place to allow them to become more aware and awake in their own time, in their own way. Well, thank you very much for listening to and working with this particular Satsanga on the 25th of February, which of course is done in conjunction with Kevin Moore and the Moore Show. It's wonderful to be able to work with you in this way, and I already feel the energies associated with people logging into this event space all around me. So thank you very much again. The next Satsanga is in March, and I believe it's on the 25th of March as well. Just checking my diary. Yep, it's on the 25th of March. In the meantime, I'm travelling to Beijing for a workshop and then Japan. So I shall be very busy in the meantime. But there should be no opening in terms of... Oh, and also I'm going to the Probe Conference in Lytham St Anne's, which is near Blackpool, in the UK, to go to the UFO conference there, to lecture on the subject of what aliens are and where they come from. And those of you who are interested on that lecture, I think the organisers are going to try and stream it, so it's available to other people as well. Stream or provide a recording of the conference, which is 2 days. And if those of you are interested, you can gain some sort of prior information by going onto my website, which is www.beyondthesource.org, which is all one word, and look at the events tab at the top, click on that, and then go down to lectures, click on that, and then at the very top of the group of hyperlinks that go to different PDF files of my lectures is the lecture I'm going to give on what aliens are. And enjoy the lecture. It's pretty much based upon the information I know, but also is geared towards linking in with their knowledge as well. So, thank you very much again for joining to this Satsanga on February the 25th in conjunction with the Moore Show, and much love to you all, and much love to everybody you've worked with, and do have a great weekend and a great end of February. Goodbye, and love to you all.
Did you see the aliens in Crete?